Hello, I wish you a good night's sleep. Today, I want to tell you a magical story that you may have never heard before. How do leaves know how to count time? Have you ever thought that plants might also have a type of biological clock just like us? Thanks to this system, leaves and flower petals can automatically know when it's the best time for photosynthesis, blooming, or even opening and closing their stomata. This secret will surely amaze you, and who knows, you might start looking at the plants around you in a completely new way. Let's explore these wonderful things together in today's video, and don't forget to subscribe to the Smart Sleep channel to always find interesting stories that help you relax before drifting off to sleep. Hello, I wish you a relaxing night. Today, we will explore an interesting, gentle, and mysterious topic. One that not only provides knowledge, but also makes us reflect on the wonders of the natural world that we often overlook. Have you ever wondered why a leaf always opens in the morning and closes when night falls? Or why do plants know when the right time is to bloom or photosynthesize? You may have thought it was just coincidence, but in reality, every activity of plants is controlled by a very special system known as the biological clock. And today, we will delve deeper into this wonderful secret, so you can appreciate that even something as small as a leaf can serve as proof of the miracle of time. The biological clock is not a new concept. It is a system that all of us have. And it is not only humans or animals that possess it. Plants, too, have their own biological clocks that help them adjust their behavior and activities to fit the surrounding environment. You can imagine the biological clock as a sophisticated machine inside the plant's body, always working silently without our interference. It not only helps us mark time, but also helps us determine the best time to act, to work, or to rest. For plants, the biological clock is the key to understanding changes in the environment, allowing them to adjust their physiological responses, such as photosynthesis or flowering. You've probably seen flowers bloom in the morning and then close as the sun sets. Or a leaf opens during the day to catch the sunlight. But at night, it slowly closes as a natural protective mechanism of the plant. But did you know, these actions are not random. They are the result of a special biological cycle that plants have developed over millions of years. The plant biological clock is the deciding factor in a plant's ability to grow, develop, and adapt to changes in its surrounding environment. To understand the plant biological clock better, we can think of it like this. If the human body has a biological clock that regulates activities like waking up, eating, and sleeping at fixed times, the plant biological clock functions similarly. Every day, plants go through physiological cycles, part of which involves using light for photosynthesis. Throughout the long day, plants must continuously adjust the photosynthesis process to maximize the energy they can harvest from the sun. Each plant knows exactly when the best time to do this is, thanks to a special system of genes and proteins that help them detect changes in light and temperature around them. Interestingly, the plant biological clock doesn't just help plants recognize time during the day. It also has the ability to detect changes in environmental factors such as temperature, humidity, and even seasonal changes. Imagine a tree in your garden. It doesn't just know when it's morning to open its leaves, but it can also sense changes in the air, recognize when spring arrives to start flowering, or when autumn comes to prepare for shedding its leaves. All these responses are thanks to an invisible but crucial biological clock mechanism that helps plants maintain life and grow sustainably. When you think about a biological clock, you might immediately think of humans or animals. But in reality, plants also have their own biological clock, and it is an essential part of their development. Thanks to this biological clock, plants can adjust their physiological responses, such as photosynthesis, cell division, and even root or leaf growth. You could think of it as a loyal friend of the plant, always ensuring it operates at the right time, at the right moment, to ensure that the plant can stay healthy and grow strong. So how do plants know the exact time to photosynthesize? How do they sense when it's spring or autumn without needing a clock like ours? That's because of a natural biological cycle, where factors such as light, temperature, and humidity all play important roles. Plants know how to use these pieces of information to adjust their activities in the best possible way. And this biological clock, although invisible to the eye, is the key to their survival and growth in a constantly changing world. When you look outside the window, you may only see the lush green leaves, blooming flowers, or the surrounding forests. But behind this beauty is a miraculous world that we can't see unless we make the effort to understand. The plant biological clock is something you may never have thought about, but it is one of the most important factors that keep the natural world running smoothly. It is a wonderful subtlety, a way in which all living creatures in nature know how to interact with time and their environment to sustain life. So, are you curious about how plants can know the time? Have you ever thought that even the leaves might count time, just like us? If you're ready, let's continue this journey to explore these wonderful mysteries, so we can understand one of the great secrets that nature has bestowed upon us. And the next time you look at a green leaf, you might realize that each leaf is not just a part of the plant, but also a tiny time machine, constantly reminding us of the miracle of life. Let these stories about the natural world help you relax before drifting off to sleep, so that when you wake up, you'll find that not only do you understand more about the world around you, but you also feel a deeper harmony with the nature that surrounds you. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope these small stories will bring you restful sleep and peaceful thoughts. Surely you have felt the wonder of the biological clock, the way that leaves and flowers automatically know the best times to work and rest. But as we delve deeper, a bigger question will arise in your mind. How do plants have such a sophisticated mechanism? How do they perceive changes in light and temperature to adjust their actions accurately, as if they were wearing an invisible watch? To answer this question, we need to understand more about the mechanism of the plant biological clock, and this is what we will explore in the next part of this story. The plant biological clock, also known as the internal biological clock, is a self-regulating system that helps plants identify and adjust their physiological activities. To understand how this works, we need to go back a bit to the basic concept, the automation of the biological clock. Plants, like all living organisms, have a biological mechanism that helps them adjust their responses to the environment. However, while animals and humans use the biological clock to determine when to rest or be active, for plants, the biological clock helps them decide when to photosynthesize, when to grow, or even when to bloom. And interestingly, this biological clock doesn't just work in a simple day-night cycle, but is also adjusted by many other factors, from temperature to light, humidity, and the change of seasons. Like a countdown timer, a plant's biological clock not only regulates its daily development, but also its growth throughout the seasons, helping the plant understand when it's time to bloom and when it's time to prepare for change. Throughout the year, Plants not only sense the cycle of day and night, but they also recognize the signs of seasonal changes, then develop appropriate physiological mechanisms. We can imagine that plants are counting time through the signals they receive from their environment. When the sun rises, the plant begins a new day, photosynthesizing to gather energy from the light. And when night falls, this biological clock signals the plant to rest, allowing it to recover and prepare for another day. All these changes are not random, but are the result of a sophisticated control system within the plant's body. So, how do plants detect these changes? The secret lies in special genes and proteins within the plant. Genes such as TOC1, CCA1, and LHY play a crucial role in regulating the plant's biological cycle. Each of these genes functions like gears in a perfect machine, ensuring that the plant always develops at the right time. In particular, these genes not only help plants adjust their activities throughout the day, but also help them recognize the changes of the seasons. You've probably heard of the seasonal blooming of plants, right? When spring comes, flowers bloom, marking the start of a new cycle. When autumn arrives, the leaves change color and begin to fall. This is all thanks to the biological clock, which helps plants detect changes in light and temperature to make decisions. You may be wondering, how can these genes regulate the plant's biological clock so accurately? The answer lies in how these genes respond to light and temperature. Each plant has an incredibly sensitive mechanism for detecting light and temperature, which helps it know when the right time to bloom, grow, or even wither is. The change in light each season activates different physiological processes, helping plants not only adapt, but also thrive in their environment. With this mechanism, plants can not only count day and night, but also recognize changes in light and temperature throughout the seasons. You can imagine a tree in your garden as a living organism, with a sophisticated clock that helps it understand time and adjust its development at each stage throughout the year. This way, the plant can photosynthesize in the morning, bloom in the spring, and prepare for winter by shedding its leaves, all controlled by its biological clock system. This biological clock not only helps plants survive, but also helps them adapt to environmental changes. By recognizing external signals such as light, temperature, and humidity, plants can adjust their physiological activities in the best way possible. This makes plants incredibly intelligent and adaptable to their environment, while also ensuring they maintain life even under harsh conditions. When we look outside, we might just see the plants standing still, leaves quietly receiving sunlight, or flowers blooming in the sun. But behind this beauty lies a wonderful biological system that enables plants to survive and thrive in this natural world. That is the miracle of the biological clock, a vital part of every plant's life and development. And when you look at the plants in your garden, perhaps you will see them not just as simple organisms, but as living beings, full of sophistication, always knowing how to adjust their lives to match the time and environment around them. The plant biological clock is the secret that helps them survive and thrive in a constantly changing world. Surely, you've realized that the natural world around us is not as simple as we once thought. Every leaf, every flower, every forest is proof of the miracle of time and life. And when we understand how the plant biological clock works, we'll feel that everything in nature is interconnected, a vibrant rhythm, the rhythm of time, helping all living creatures in it survive and flourish. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. I hope you find relaxation and peace through the story of the plant biological clock, so that when night falls, you can rest easy, knowing that in the morning, you'll feel a little more love for the nature around you. Along with TOC1, there is another group of genes called CCA1 and LHY. These two genes work together to help the plant's biological clock operate smoothly. CCA1 and LHY play a particularly important role in determining the plant's biological cycle, especially in deciding when the plant needs to be active and when it needs to rest. All three genes, TOC1, CCA1, and LHY, help the plant adjust its physiological responses based on the signals they receive from the environment, such as light, temperature, and humidity. But how do these genes understand when it's the right time to carry out physiological activities? The answer lies in a very special mechanism called the autonomous cycle. Inside the plant's body, these genes operate on a fixed cycle, much like a mechanical clock, and they repeat this cycle every 24 hours. Every morning, when sunlight begins to shine on the ground, the genes are activated, sending signals for the plant to begin photosynthesis. And as night falls, the biological clock cycle starts to adjust the plant's activities, helping it rest and prepare for a new day. One of the remarkable features of the plant biological clock is its flexibility. Plants have the ability to adjust their biological clock to adapt to environmental changes. You've probably heard about how plants change their growth patterns depending on the season. In spring, they bloom. When summer arrives, they thrive. And when autumn comes, they prepare for winter by shedding their leaves. These changes are not random, but are controlled by the biological clock, which is influenced by the changes in light and temperature. You might also wonder another interesting point. How can plants recognize the arrival of spring or autumn without having a clock? The answer lies in the coordination between genes and the environment. Genes like TOC1, CCA1, and LHY can recognize environmental changes, such as shifts in temperature or light throughout the seasons. The plant will receive signals from sunlight in the spring when the days get longer and the temperature warms up, and the biological clock will help the plant adjust its growth to bloom. When autumn arrives, with decreasing light and cooler temperatures, the biological clock signals the plant to start preparing for winter, helping it shed leaves to protect itself from harsh conditions. You may be wondering how plants can perceive such small changes. This is due to the plant's incredibly sensitive biological mechanisms. The genes and proteins in the plant do not only respond to light, but can also detect subtle changes in temperature, humidity, and other environmental factors. This sensitivity allows plants to grow vigorously in the diverse and changing natural conditions. Another surprising aspect is that the plant's biological clock is not a rigid mechanism, but an extremely flexible system. Plants can adjust their biological clock when faced with sudden environmental changes. For example, if a large storm causes the light to be dimmed or the temperature to change suddenly, the plant's biological clock can pause or adjust slightly to help the plant adapt to the new conditions. This helps the plant stay in sync and continue to thrive in a fluctuating environment. You may be wondering why plants need such a complex biological clock system. The answer is that plants do not merely live to survive, but must also adapt to their environment in order to grow sustainably. It is the biological clock that helps plants adjust their activities to fit with the time and living conditions, optimizing photosynthesis, growth, and development. When you stand and look at a tree in your garden in the early morning, you might only see the leaves opening to catch the light. But few people know that behind that, there is a complex biological system helping the plant know exactly when it's time to work and when it's time to rest. Plants are not just simple organisms. They are living time machines, constantly adjusting themselves to survive and grow in a changing world. By understanding understanding the structure of the biological clock, you can see plants in a completely new light. Every leaf, every flower is not a static entity, but a living organism that has very sensitive reactions to time and the environment. And when you appreciate the miracle of the biological clock in plants, you will treasure the small things in the natural world even more. I wish you a peaceful night, and I hope this story helps you feel more relaxed before drifting off to sleep. Remember that nature always holds wonderful secrets, and every time you look at the plants, you will realize they too have their own stories to tell. Stories not everyone knows. We have explored how the leaves open to catch the light every morning and then close at night, as well as the intricate mechanism that helps plants recognize environmental changes. Now, let's continue exploring another very important part of this story: the role of light in the plant's biological clock. Light is not just a life source for plants, but also a key factor that helps the plant biological clock work in rhythm. Let me tell you how light affects plants, so you can appreciate even more the miraculous connection between plants and their environment. Sunlight is the most important energy source for plant life. You may already know that plants need light for photosynthesis, but few understand that light is not just a source of energy. It also plays a role in regulating the physiological cycles within the plant's body. When light hits the leaves, a series of physiological reactions are triggered, and this is when the plant's biological clock begins to work. Sunlight is a primary signal that helps plants determine the time of day. When the sun rises, the first light hits the leaves, and the cells in the leaves immediately sense this change, beginning the process of photosynthesis. This is a complex biochemical chain reaction in which the plant uses light to convert carbon dioxide and water into oxygen and glucose, a source of energy necessary for plant growth. You could imagine plants using light like an alarm clock, signaling the start of a new day. But light does not only help plants know when it's time to photosynthesize, it also helps regulate many other physiological processes in the plant's body. When plants receive light, the genes and proteins in the plant begin to work, adjusting various functions. For example, one important function is the opening of the stomata, tiny pores on the surface of the leaves. Opening the stomata allows the plant to take in carbon dioxide from the air to carry out photosynthesis. However, this only happens when there is sufficient light, and the plant's biological clock helps it determine the right time to open the stomata. Like an alarm clock, light also helps plants know when it's time to rest. As the sun sets, the plant starts preparing for a night of rest. The cells in the leaves gradually close, photosynthesis stops, and the plant begins to rest. This is when the plant prepares for other physiological cycles, such as metabolism and energy recovery, to begin again the next day. You could imagine that, just like a person after a long day's work, plants also need quiet moments to recover, and light is the signal that tells them when to rest. So why is light so crucial for plant life? Surely you would agree that plants cannot grow without light. But in addition to providing energy for photosynthesis, light helps plants maintain life and grow in a constantly changing world. When a plant detects light, it does not just perceive the time of day, but also adjusts its physiological activities to fit the environmental conditions. This allows plants not only to survive, but also to grow robustly in their habitat. Light is not only important during the day, but also has a significant effect at night. Although light is no longer present at night, plants still remember the changes in light during the day and use this to adjust their activities. This allows plants to prepare for the next day right from the night before. You may have heard of the concept of nighttime photosynthesis. Although plants cannot photosynthesize in the dark, metabolic processes still continue through the night. It's the changes in light during the day that help plants maintain their physiological cycles in rhythm. For plants living in areas with unstable light conditions, such as deep forests or under other trees' shadows, light becomes even more critical. These plants have special mechanisms to detect and adjust their responses to changes in light. For example, some plants will adjust the direction of their leaves and branches to optimize light absorption, even when they don't receive direct sunlight. This helps the plant continue to grow, even in environments with limited light. And it's not just sunlight. Daily changes in light intensity also have a profound impact on plants. Plants don't just detect light by its color, but also by its intensity. For instance, on cloudy days or when thick clouds are present, the light becomes weaker, and the plant adjusts its physiological activities to adapt to this condition. Plants even have the ability to detect small changes in the length of day and night due to seasonal variations in light. You could imagine that plants not only live by the hour, but also know when it's time to grow, when it's time to rest, and when it's the season to bloom or shed leaves. One interesting point is that changes in light every season can lead to significant changes in the plant's physiological activities. In spring, when days are longer and light is stronger, plants begin to increase photosynthesis and bloom. In autumn, when light fades and temperatures drop, plants enter a resting state, reducing photosynthesis and preparing for winter. So, light is not only a factor for plant growth every day, but it also helps plants understand and adapt to long-term seasonal cycles. Light, therefore, is the heartbeat of the plant biological clock, marking time not only in the day-night cycle, but also across seasons, creating eternal life cycles that allow plants to grow sustainably in nature. From the start of the day to the plant's rest at night, from one season to another, light is the life source and the timekeeper, controlling and shaping the life of plants. And when you lie down to prepare for sleep, remember that the plants around you are also carrying out these wonderful cycles, following the rhythm of light and time. Let that rhythm quietly lull you into sleep, so that when you wake up in the morning, you can feel the mysterious and fresh life around you. With this sensitivity, plants can make the most of sunlight without wasting it. When the sunlight is strong, plants expand the cells in their leaves to absorb more light while enhancing the photosynthesis process. But as the sun begins to set, the biological clock helps the plant switch to a resting state, no longer overworking itself. Photosynthesis, although crucial, cannot be sustained indefinitely without rest. Thanks to the biological clock, plants can carry out this process with precision and optimal efficiency. Interestingly, plants can also count the number of hours of light they receive during the day, which helps them adjust the amount of energy they produce. If, on a particular day, the light is weaker due to cloud cover or a heavy rainstorm, the plant's biological clock will detect this change and help the plant adjust its photosynthesis accordingly to the new conditions. This allows plants to photosynthesize effectively without worrying about sudden environmental changes. But that's not all. Plants also have the ability to detect changes in the length of day and night, particularly during seasonal transitions. In spring, when the days get longer, plants start the photosynthesis process more vigorously, helping them gather enough energy to grow stronger. In autumn, when the days get shorter, plants reduce their photosynthesis activity and begin preparing for winter, conserving energy and protecting themselves from the cold. And photosynthesis is not just a part of the life cycle, it also influences plant growth. It's easy to notice that plants that can photosynthesize well grow healthier and more robust. Thanks to this process, plants not only generate energy for themselves, but also provide energy for the entire surrounding ecosystem. From herbivores to humans, we all depend on such processes to maintain life. You could imagine that each leaf on a tree is a tiny machine, tirelessly working to generate energy for the plant. Yet, all of this is controlled rhythmically by the biological clock. You might think of plants as intelligent organisms, knowing how to adjust their energy according to time and environment, allowing them to survive and thrive throughout the year. And when you look at the leaves every morning, you might realize that they are not just a part of the plant, but are mystical biological machines carrying out invisible tasks to maintain life. Let these thoughts gently lull you into sleep, bringing peace as you know that even in the natural world around us, everything has a perfect balance. From the light to each leaf, all governed by the plant's biological clock, working gently without hurry, wishing you a peaceful night. And when you wake up tomorrow, you will feel the miracle of life around you. We have explored light and its important role in regulating the plant photosynthesis process, helping plants maximize solar energy. But aside from light, there is another crucial factor for plant life: the day-night cycle and behavioral changes. Yes, like us, plants have their own cycles for when to be active and when to rest. Let's continue exploring how the plant biological clock regulates their behaviors through the day-night cycle. When you look outside in the morning, plants may appear still, calm, and motionless, but in reality, throughout the day, they are constantly changing. Even though these changes are subtle and hard to notice immediately, the leaves open to catch the light, and then at night they close, as if completing the physiological cycle of a new day. This is the rhythm controlled by the biological clock, helping the plant know when to start and when to end its activities. Plants, like all living organisms, need a rhythm to sustain life. They know when it's time to open their leaves and photosynthesize, and when it's time to rest. As the sun rises, the plant begins to open its leaves and starts photosynthesis. This process not only helps the plant absorb energy, but also provides oxygen to the surrounding air. However, plants do not need to work all day. At night, when sunlight is no longer available, the plant begins to reduce its activities. Photosynthesis stops, and the plant prepares for a restful night. This day-night cycle is not just the change of light, but an essential part of regulating the plant's physiological activities. Plants use light as a signal to determine time. When light appears, the plant begins the necessary activities to absorb energy from the sun. But when darkness falls, the plant gradually shifts into a resting state. During this rest period, other physiological activities of the plant continue, such as metabolism and the growth of plant parts. The change between day and night also impacts the behavior of plants in a very special way. Plants not only adjust when to photosynthesize, but also react to changes in their environment. For instance, during the day, plants open their stomata to take in CO2 for photosynthesis. But at night, when there is no light for photosynthesis, the stomata close to conserve water and prevent excessive evaporation. This is a brilliant adjustment by the plant, helping it maintain life under potentially unpredictable conditions. You may wonder how plants can detect when to open their leaves and when to close them. The answer lies in the plant's biological clock. Like our own bodies, the plant's biological clock is programmed to detect changes in light and adjust its activities according to the time of day. The biological clock not only regulates the day-night cycle, but also adjusts other physiological responses, such as the opening and closing of stomata, root and branch growth, and even flowering. Interestingly, the day-night cycle does not only affect the plant on a single day, but also helps the plant determine when the right time is to shift according to the season. When spring arrives, the plant detects the lengthening of the day, which helps the plant start blooming and growing stronger. When autumn comes, the days shorten and the plant begins to prepare for winter. These changes are precisely controlled by the biological clock, allowing the plant to survive through the seasons without interruption. Plants are also very sensitive to changes in the environment during these cycles. When there are sudden changes in temperature or light, the biological clock helps the plant adjust its responses to adapt to the new conditions. For example, when summer arrives with intense sunlight and high temperatures, the plant adjusts the opening of its stomata to reduce water loss, yet still maintains photosynthesis. And when winter arrives, the plant reduces its activities to conserve energy, preparing for recovery in the spring. Everything operates according to a natural and perfect process, like a gentle melody that plants always follow. All these changes are the result of an invisible yet sophisticated biological system, helping plants adjust their behavior to the rhythm of nature. And have you ever wondered if we can learn from plants about how to integrate with the natural rhythm of life, knowing when to work, when to rest, and when to prepare for significant changes in life? The green leaves opening every morning are not only the start of a new day for the plant, but also a part of the interaction between the plant and nature. Plants understand that, to survive and thrive, they must harmonize with time. And when you fall asleep, remember that the plants around you are still living in the rhythm of time, still listening to the changes in light, temperature, and every moment of day and night. Let these thoughts relax your mind, so you can immerse yourself in the peace of nature. And when you wake up in the morning, you will feel as if you've become part of the gentle, eternal rhythm of the world around you. We have deeply explored the day-night cycle and the behavioral changes of plants at every moment in time. Plants can feel the rhythm of nature, from the daylight to the darkness of night, all controlled by an invisible yet powerful biological clock. Now, we will explore another equally important aspect of plant life: the application of the biological clock in agriculture. When you think of agriculture, you may think of planting, caring for plants, and harvesting crops. But the plant biological clock plays a larger, deeper role in making agriculture more sustainable and efficient. You've probably noticed that plants change with the seasons, and it seems they can sense changes in their environment. Every season, plants undergo subtle changes, from blooming in spring to shedding leaves in autumn. But all of these changes are not random. In fact, each plant has an invisible biological clock that helps it detect changes in its environment. Factors such as light, temperature, humidity, and other environmental elements can significantly affect the plant's biological clock, influencing its physiological responses, which in turn impacts its growth. As we have explored in previous sections, light plays an important role in the process of photosynthesis and the plant's biological clock. However, light is not the only factor. Temperature and humidity also profoundly affect the life of plants. Plants can sense temperature changes, and when there is a sudden temperature shift, the plant's biological clock helps it adjust its physiological responses to suit the new conditions. For example, in winter, when temperatures drop, plants can reduce their physiological activities to protect themselves from the cold, while One of the clearest examples of the impact of temperature on plants is the phenomenon of dormancy in the cold season. When the temperature drops to a certain level, the plant's biological clock helps it reduce its physiological activities, thus conserving energy and protecting the plant from the effects of cold weather. The plant will slow down all activities like a self-protection mechanism, and when spring arrives, when the temperature warms up, the plant wakes up, resuming physiological activities such as photosynthesis and leaf development. Alongside temperature, humidity is also an important factor in regulating plant responses. The humidity in the air affects the rate of transpiration and the opening and closing of stomata. When the air becomes dry, plants will close their stomata to prevent rapid water loss. And when the humidity is high, plants will open their stomata to enhance photosynthesis. This is a very smart mechanism that helps plants optimize water use and prevent water loss in dry environmental conditions. You might wonder, how can plants detect changes in temperature and humidity so accurately? The secret lies in the biological mechanisms inside plants, particularly the proteins and genes that control the biological clock. These proteins help plants recognize environmental signals and in turn adjust their physiological responses precisely. Plants are like delicate organisms, capable of sensing even the smallest changes in the environment and adjusting their behavior accordingly. This is a wonderful interaction between plants and the environment, helping plants survive and thrive sustainably under all conditions. When plants detect changes in temperature and humidity, their biological clocks respond immediately. For example, when the weather becomes hot, plants adjust the opening and closing of their stomata to minimize water loss. And when it rains, with higher humidity, plants may open their stomata to maximize photosynthesis. This is an automatic but highly accurate mechanism that helps plants survive and thrive even when environmental conditions change. In addition to temperature and humidity, another important factor we cannot overlook is wind. Wind can affect the plant's rate of transpiration and photosynthesis. When strong winds occur, plants may lose water more rapidly through their leaf surfaces, and as a result, the plant's biological clock helps adjust the opening of stomata to minimize water loss. Wind can also help disperse seeds or pollen, but it can also affect the plant's growth when the plant has to cope with strong winds, especially in urban environments where plants have to live under unfavorable conditions such as air pollution, artificial light, and sudden temperature changes. The plant's biological clock needs to be even more flexible to help the plant adapt. In urban areas, plants not only face changes in light and temperature, but also fight against air pollution and water shortages. But no matter how tough the conditions, plants can still adjust their behavior through their biological clock to protect themselves and sustain life. We can learn many lessons from this interaction between plants and their environment. Plants are not just living organisms but resilient warriors, always knowing how to adapt and survive in a challenging world. They can adjust their rhythms, just like us, to protect themselves from unpredictable changes in their surroundings. Thanks to this intelligence, plants have survived for millions of years, and to this day they stand strong on Earth. When you look at plants, you might see them as simple entities, standing silently in the wind. But if you understand the miraculous mechanisms plants possess, you will sense their vitality and intelligence. All the small changes in the life of a plant, from opening leaves in the morning to shedding leaves in the fall, are manifestations of an incredibly delicate and perfect biological system. With this understanding, I hope you will feel the closeness and wonder of the natural world. so that each time you look at plants, you will see not just a still organism, but one that lives with exquisite harmony with nature. And as you prepare to drift off to sleep, let these thoughts gently lead you into a dream, so that tomorrow when you wake up, you will feel the peace in each breath, just as plants quietly live and grow day by day. After exploring the subtleties of how the plant biological clock interacts with environmental factors, we can feel that plants are not just static entities but vibrant organisms that know how to adapt and respond to the world around them. This leads me to an interesting question. How do plants keep time? Can they detect environmental changes, not only by sensing light and temperature, but also by recognizing changes in time? Let's continue exploring these fascinating secrets of plants' ability to keep time, and understand how the leaves and branches around us work like a perfect natural biological clock. If you observe a garden carefully each morning, you will see the leaves gradually open to receive sunlight. They don't just open randomly, but seem to have a signal, as if the leaves are counting time throughout the night. Why do I say this? Because every plant, every species has its own biological cycle, and the biological clock is the deciding factor that helps them know the right time to begin important activities such as photosynthesis, flowering, or even transitioning between seasons. Like us, plants have their own rhythms and timings. However, unlike us, plants do not need wall clocks or electronic devices to know the time. The plant knows that when the light reaches a certain level, it is the right time to open its stomata and begin absorbing light for photosynthesis. And when night falls, as the light fades and the temperature changes, the plant automatically prepares for rest, closing its stomata and transitioning into a resting state, preparing for a new cycle the next day. An interesting point that you may not know is that the plant biological clock also helps them recognize seasonal changes. Plants don't just know when it's day or night, but also recognize the passage of time through the seasons of the year. When spring comes, when light increases and temperatures warm, plants know that this is the right time to grow and bloom. And when autumn arrives, as the light diminishes and temperatures cool, plants automatically reduce their physiological activities, such as slowing down photosynthesis, and prepare for winter. Plants can sense these seasonal changes thanks to a special mechanism called seasonal induction. This is an ability plants use to keep track of seasonal changes, adjusting physiological activities such as flowering, growth, and leaf shedding. For instance, in winter, when the temperature drops and light wanes, plants enter a dormant state. By spring, when the days lengthen and temperatures warm, plants wake up, bloom, and grow stronger. And this process occurs not only in a few plant species, but is a common phenomenon in the plant world. But how do plants detect and keep track of these changes? The secret lies in the incredibly sophisticated biological mechanisms within plants, including specific genes and proteins. These genes, such as TOC1, CCA1, and LHY, help plants detect signals from the environment and adjust their physiological activities accordingly. These genes create a synchronized cycle that helps the plant develop through the appropriate stages of the year with precision. One of the most important factors in keeping time for plants is the process of cell division. As the plant grows, cells in the stem and leaves must divide in a fixed cycle to create new parts. This process is controlled by the biological clock, ensuring that the plant grows uniformly and healthily. The biological clock ensures that cells divide at the right time, helping the plant develop new parts in the appropriate seasons. So, aside from environmental changes, are there other factors that can affect the plant's ability to keep time? Another crucial factor is the impact of the surrounding environment. such as climate change or light pollution. If plants live in an environment with uneven light, such as in urban areas with strong artificial lighting, their biological clock may become disrupted, affecting their growth and development. Plants can sense these changes and try to adjust, but sometimes environmental changes that are too drastic may prevent plants from growing in sync with their natural rhythms. This leads to an important issue in protecting plants and the natural environment. If we do not protect the habitats of plants, especially in terms of light and temperature, we will disrupt the natural cycles that plants depend on. Therefore, understanding how plants keep time not only helps us understand their growth better, but also raises awareness of the importance of protecting natural habitats so that plants can maintain life and develop sustainably. When you think of plants, you might see them standing silently in the garden, but in reality, they are living in a natural rhythm, a rhythm they understand and follow perfectly. It is their biological clock that helps them keep time, knowing the right moments for photosynthesis, flowering, and resting, waiting for the new season. I hope that when you look at a plant tomorrow morning, you will see that they are not just lifeless entities, but vibrant organisms, knowing how to perceive and adapt to the world around them. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovering the wonders of the natural world. I wish you a peaceful night, and tomorrow when you wake up, you will feel the vitality of the plants and the world around you. Similarly, in areas with fluctuating temperatures, the plant's biological clock can also become disrupted when plants cannot accurately detect the changes between seasons. They may begin to develop too early or too late. This can lead to uneven growth, preventing the plant from flowering or fruiting at the right time. A typical example is agricultural crops like rice, corn, or cotton, which are very sensitive to temperature changes. If the plant's biological clock is no longer accurate, the yield of the crops can be reduced. Moreover, disrupting the biological clock can also affect the plant's ability to withstand harsh environmental factors. When plants cannot effectively adjust their physiological activities, they become weaker, more susceptible to pest attacks or damage from bad weather. If the plant does not know when to shed its leaves to protect itself from the cold, or when to focus energy on root development during dry seasons, it cannot maintain long-term survival in unfavorable conditions. One critical factor that must be considered when studying the impact of disrupting the plant's biological clock is light pollution. Light pollution occurs when artificial light infiltrates at night, preventing plants from accurately recognizing the day-night cycle. When plants receive excessive light at night, their biological clocks become disrupted, and they can no longer perform their physiological functions at the right time. Studies have even shown that light pollution can reduce the plant's ability to photosynthesize, because uneven light during the day makes it difficult for plants to determine the best time for efficient photosynthesis. Research also shows that light pollution can prevent plants from flowering at the appropriate time. This is especially important for plants with a seasonal growth cycle. If plants do not bloom in the right season, pollination and seed dispersal will be disrupted, affecting the survival and growth of the next generation of plants. These small changes in the plant's physiology can accumulate and have long-term impacts on the ecosystem as a whole. Furthermore, changes in the timing cycle can also affect the ecological relationships between plants and other organisms. When plants bloom too early or too late, pollinators such as bees or butterflies may not be present at the right time to pollinate the plants. This will cause an imbalance in the ecosystem, affecting the development of plant species and animals that depend on them. An ecosystem that is usually in balance and harmony can be disrupted by a small disruption in the plant's biological clock. So, when the plant's biological clock is disrupted, what can we do to help the plant return to its natural rhythm? One simple way we can help is by creating environments that are less affected by light pollution to help plants rest at night and maintain their natural cycles. We can reduce artificial light in areas where plants grow, especially in urban areas. We can also plant species in a way that is compatible with the natural climate and light conditions of the region, helping to prevent the plant's biological clock from being disrupted by sudden changes in the environment. In addition, selecting plant varieties suited to different regions and natural conditions is also very important. Scientists are researching and developing plant varieties that are more resilient to climate change and environmental pollution. These plants can maintain their biological clocks and grow robustly, even in harsh environmental conditions. When you think about the leaves swaying in the wind, you might see them as just elements of nature, but behind every change, every rhythm in the life of plants, there is a sophisticated biological system working tirelessly. Thank you for exploring these secrets with me, and I hope you will feel a sense of peace knowing that each plant has its own story of adaptation and vitality. We have explored the wonders of plant life together, from how they keep time to how they adapt to environmental changes. All of this is controlled by the sophisticated biological clock that plants possess. But one important question remains. Can we intervene in these mechanisms to help plants grow stronger? To understand more, let's explore the external factors that influence the plant's biological clock and how these factors can alter the life of plants, helping them grow stronger or sometimes hindering their development. Plants, like all living organisms, are influenced not only by internal factors but also by many external environmental elements. These factors can be natural, such as light, temperature, and humidity, or they can be artificial, like light pollution, noise, and changes in soil structure. The plant's biological clock has the ability to adjust to respond to these factors, but sometimes excessive changes can disrupt the plant's physiological activities, affecting its growth and development. As we have learned in previous sections, light is the most important factor for the plant's biological clock. However, not all light has a positive effect on plant growth. In modern urban environments, artificial light often causes light pollution, preventing plants from resting at night. You can easily notice that plants in cities seem to grow differently than those in natural environments. They cannot detect when it is day or night, when it is time to bloom, or when it is time to rest. This causes the plant's biological clock to become disrupted, affecting its growth. Light pollution is a major issue not only for plants but for all living organisms. Plants need darkness at night to carry out physiological processes like respiration and recovery after a long day of photosynthesis. When artificial light invades at night, the plant's biological clock is disrupted, causing the plant to be unable to recover properly. As a result, plants not only grow poorly, but also become more vulnerable when faced with harsh environmental conditions. In addition to light, temperature is also an important factor affecting the plant's biological clock. Plants have the ability to sense temperature changes throughout the seasons, and the biological clock helps them adjust their physiological activities to adapt. However, in recent years, climate change has caused temperature fluctuations to become more rapid and extreme than ever before. Plants may not be able to adjust quickly enough, leading to situations where they bloom too early or too late, or even fail to bloom at all, disrupting the plant's reproductive process. We can easily notice these changes when looking at the flowering season, harvest season, or when the plant begins to prepare for winter. If spring comes early or summer lasts longer than usual, plants may become confused, leading to growth that is out of sync with their natural cycles. This reduces crop yields in agriculture, affecting harvesting and agricultural product production. Humidity is another factor that cannot be overlooked. Plants are very sensitive to changes in humidity in both the air and soil. If the humidity is too low, plants will lose water quickly through evaporation, and if the humidity is too high, plants may face rot problems. The plant's biological clock can adjust physiological activities like opening and closing stomata to regulate the amount of water the plant loses. However, when humidity changes too dramatically, the plant cannot adjust in time, leading to disruptions in photosynthesis and metabolism. Soil environment also plays a significant role in plant growth. Soil can be altered by human activities, from agricultural practices, urban development, to pollution from industrial activities. When the soil is polluted or deprived of nutrients, plants cannot grow healthily, and their biological clocks are affected. Plants in poor or polluted soils must struggle to survive, and sometimes their biological clocks no longer function accurately, preventing them from developing properly. Especially in urban areas where plant living spaces are limited, changing cultivation and care practices is crucial. These areas often suffer from air pollution, light pollution, and temperature fluctuations. These factors significantly affect the plant's biological clock, preventing plants from adapting and growing as they should. Plants cannot detect the right time to bloom or when it is time to shed leaves and rest. So, what can we do to minimize the impact of these factors on the plant's biological clock? One of the simplest but most effective measures is to protect and preserve the natural environment of plants. We can reduce light pollution in urban areas by turning off lights at night, or using artificial light in a way that does not disrupt the plant's biological clock. This will help plants rest at night and maintain their natural physiological cycles. We also need to pay attention to caring for and protecting the soil environment, providing necessary nutrients for plants. When the soil is nourished and not polluted, plants will grow strong, and their biological clocks will work accurately. Additionally, planting species suited to the climate and environment is very important. Plants need to be selected based on the surrounding environmental factors to help them grow well without being excessively affected by external factors. It's remarkable to realize that in the natural world, everything follows a rhythm, a harmonious interaction. Every plant, every leaf has its own story of survival and growth. And we, as caretakers of nature, can help plants maintain that rhythm, ensuring they live healthily in a world of constant change. When you look at the plants outside, remember that they live in a constantly changing world, but their biological clocks still help them survive and grow every day. After we have explored the external environmental factors that influence the plant's biological clock, from light, temperature, humidity, to soil, we can clearly feel that changes in the plant's living environment are crucial. But the next question I want you to reflect on is, can we use our knowledge of the plant's biological clock to help them grow more sustainably in the future? Let's continue our journey by exploring the fascinating applications of the plant biological clock in research and the development of new crop varieties. We live in an era where climate and environmental challenges are becoming more serious than ever before. Climate change, air pollution, the destruction of forests and soil, all these are having a strong impact on the plant's habitat. In this context, understanding and applying knowledge about the plant biological clock not only helps us take better care of plants, but also opens the door to research on new crop varieties that can adapt to environmental changes. Plants are not only our source of life through providing oxygen, food, and raw materials, but they also play an important role in maintaining the balance of ecosystems. However, when the environment changes too quickly, plants may not be able to adapt in time, and this is when research into plant biological clocks can help us find solutions. To do this, we need to understand more about the mechanisms controlling plant development and apply them to create new varieties that are better able to withstand changing environmental conditions. You've probably heard of drought-resistant plants, disease-resistant plants, or plants that can survive extreme environmental conditions. These plants are created through genetic research and modern biological techniques. However, one of the key factors in creating these plants is understanding the plant's biological clock. When we can read the plant's biological clock, we can adjust the internal factors of the plant to create varieties suited to rapidly changing environmental conditions. One notable application of the biological clock in crop research is the creation of plants that can adapt to changing temperatures and humidity. With the increasingly evident climate change, temperature and humidity fluctuations have made it impossible for plants to keep time accurately. Plants may bloom too early or too late, or even stop growing when the temperature changes suddenly. But if we understand the plant's biological clock, we can find ways to adjust these factors to create varieties that can grow steadily under any weather conditions. In addition, another research field where the plant biological clock can help is in developing sustainable crops and reducing resource use. Plants can keep time to know when to use energy and resources, like water, light, and nutrients from the soil. If we can adjust the plant's biological clock accurately, it can optimize its use of resources, saving water, fertilizer, and energy, while minimizing negative environmental impacts. This is a major step toward developing sustainable agriculture, one of the most important factors in protecting our planet. Research into the biological clock can also help us understand how plants adjust their activities to combat pests and other harmful factors. Plants not only need to protect themselves from environmental factors, but also face threats from other organisms, like insects or fungi. However, not all plants have the ability to defend against these threats effectively. If we understand the plant's biological clock mechanism, we can create varieties that are better able to protect themselves, reducing the need for pesticides and chemicals, thus protecting human health and the environment. Plants, whether in the natural environment or urban areas, need proper care to grow healthily. The plant's biological clock helps it know when to grow, when to rest, and when it is the right time to bloom or bear fruit. By understanding the biological clock, we can intervene in the plant's growth cycle appropriately, enhancing vitality and crop yields. This is particularly important in agriculture, where productivity and crop quality are the top priorities. In reality, current research is focused on creating crop varieties that can grow well in all environmental conditions, from arid lands to areas with high humidity, from cold regions to hot zones. The combination of knowledge about the plant, biological clock, and biotechnology can create perfect varieties capable of adapting to any environmental changes. This will not only help increase agricultural productivity, but also help protect natural resources, reduce pollution, and preserve ecosystems. CRISPR technology, a powerful tool for gene editing, can help us adjust the plant biological clock. By editing genes that control plant development, we can create crop varieties that are better able to withstand extreme environmental conditions. However, further research is needed to ensure that intervening in the plant's biological clock does not cause unforeseen consequences, and helps the plant develop as naturally as possible, from developing varieties that are more resilient to extreme conditions to creating sustainable farming methods. Research into plant biological clocks holds great promise for the future. When we understand how plants keep time and regulate their lives, we can not only take better care of them but also create a greener and more sustainable agricultural future. When you look outside every morning, you might see plants standing quietly under the sunlight, but behind that, there is an invisible rhythm unfolding, a rhythm of time, of life, that plants follow to survive and grow. I hope you will feel the wonder of nature when you realize that every plant has its own story of development and adaptation to the world around it. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope these stories will bring you a peaceful and relaxing night. You've probably heard of genes and proteins, but do you know that they play a crucial role in regulating all of the physiological activities of plants? Each plant has its own unique genome, and within it are specific genes that help regulate the plant's biological clock. These genes not only help the plant understand time, but also enable it to respond to the environment and sustain life throughout the seasons. Plants have the ability to adjust their genes so that they can thrive in the ever-changing conditions of the natural environment. One of the most important genes in controlling the plant's biological clock is TOC1. This gene plays a crucial role in regulating the plant's 24-hour cycle, helping it adjust its physiological activities throughout the day and night. TOC1 is really like a switch, turning on and off to help the plant detect time. When light shines, this gene becomes active, triggering physiological reactions in the plant, such as photosynthesis, cell division, and growth. Conversely, at night, when the light fades, this gene helps the plant switch into a resting mode, halting photosynthesis and reducing other activities. In addition to TOC1, there are other important genes such as CCA1 and LHY. These genes work together to create a perfect coordination within the plant's physiological cycle. They help the plant recognize changes in light and adjust its physiological responses so that it can grow robustly under different conditions. Throughout the day, from the first light of dawn until the fall of night, these genes continuously adjust and ensure that the plant always operates in harmony with its natural rhythm. You might wonder, why do plants need these genes to keep time? The answer is that these genes help synchronize critical physiological activities such as photosynthesis, growth, and reproduction with environmental factors such as light, temperature, and humidity. Without these genes, the plant would not be able to function effectively, as it would not be able to adjust its development in line with time and its environment. When plants keep time accurately, they optimize their photosynthesis capacity, absorb energy from the sun, and use resources in the most efficient way possible. If these genes don't work correctly, the plant could photosynthesize at the wrong time, or not develop well during the growing season. In fact, plants might not flower at the right time or fail to prepare for winter, thus affecting their long-term sustainability. Understanding how these genes work not only helps us better understand how plants function, but also opens up the possibility of editing these genes to create crop varieties with higher yields and better resistance. This is why research on the genes and proteins that control the plant's biological clock is becoming a crucial field in modern agriculture. With advancements in gene technology, especially gene editing methods like CRISPR, we can modify and optimize the genes in plants to help them grow better under changing environmental conditions. For example, crops that are drought tolerant or resistant to pests without the need for chemicals, can be developed. These varieties will help increase yields without harming the environment, while also reducing reliance on fertilizers and pesticides. Moreover, research on the genes that control the biological clock can help us understand how plants develop through the seasons. We could create crop varieties that flower and fruit more quickly, allowing for increased productivity in a shorter growing season. Alternatively, we could develop varieties that are better equipped to withstand environmental stresses, such as high temperatures or lack of water. However, gene editing in plants must be done carefully. Excessive changes could lead to unforeseen consequences. For instance, if the editing process alters the plant's biological clock too much, the plant may fail to develop properly or may not be able to maintain its physiological cycles. This could disrupt the plant's reproduction process, leading to a reduced quality and quantity of the harvested product. Therefore, for gene editing to be effective, scientists must have a thorough understanding of the genes controlling the plant's biological clock, as well as the environmental factors that influence plants. This is a significant challenge, but also an opportunity to create healthy, sustainable plants capable of withstanding harsh environmental factors and increasing agricultural productivity in a sustainable way. With continuous advances in biotechnology and a deeper understanding of the plant's biological clock, the future of agriculture could change dramatically. New crop varieties, optimized in terms of genes and adaptability, will help us achieve effective agricultural production while still protecting the environment. In doing so, we can contribute to creating a greener, more sustainable world where plants and humans live in harmony. Thank you for joining me in exploring one of nature's marvelous secrets, where science and nature combine to create wonders. I hope that when you look at the plants around you tomorrow morning, you'll feel the vitality and amazing rhythm that they experience every day. Let these thoughts gently lull you to sleep, so that when you wake up, you'll realize that every plant is not just a part of the natural world, but a part of the great story of life. Having explored the important genes controlling the biological clock and their significance for plant development, we will now move on to another fascinating aspect of the plant world: the impact of disrupting the plant biological clock and the consequences this disruption can cause for plants. Especially in the context of an ever-changing environment. Like all living organisms, plants have their own physiological rhythms, which are subtly regulated by their biological clocks. However, these biological clocks are not always stable, and when disrupted by external factors, everything can change. We already know that light, temperature, humidity, and many other factors influence plant activity. But can these factors shift the rhythm of a plant's biological clock? The answer is yes, and this can lead to a series of serious consequences, affecting the plant's survival and development. One of the greatest impacts on the plant's biological clock is light pollution. In urban areas, artificial light not only brightens the surroundings at night, but also interferes with the plant's natural cycle. Plants, as we know, rely on the light-dark cycle to regulate their physiological activities. But when artificial light shines at night, the plant's biological clock may become disturbed, and it may not recognize the right time to rest. As a result, the plant may fail to rest properly at night, preventing it from carrying out crucial physiological processes such as cellular recovery, or reducing its ability to photosynthesize the following day. When the plant's biological clock is disturbed like this, it may begin to grow out of sync with its cycle, blooming too early or too late, or even failing to bloom at the proper time. This is especially critical for crops in agriculture, where the growing season determines the yield and quality of the harvest. A recent study showed that disruption of the light cycle can prevent plants from growing properly, leading to crop failures or reduced yields. In addition to light pollution, climate change is another concerning factor that affects the plant's biological clock. Sudden temperature changes, longer summers, or delayed winters can prevent plants from recognizing seasonal changes as they normally would. Plants may not adapt in time to these changes, resulting in early flowering, uneven growth, or failure to prepare for winter. This can affect the plant's ability to reproduce and its long-term sustainability. You may have heard of the phenomenon where plants bloom early in spring when the weather warms up quickly, but this is not always beneficial. When plants confuse the season, the flowers may not develop fully or may fail to disperse seeds effectively, as the plant doesn't have enough time to develop the necessary reproductive structures. The result is that the harvest may not yield the expected productivity, reducing profits and impacting agriculture. Sudden temperature changes, particularly in transitional seasons like spring and fall, can pose a significant problem for plants. During these times, the plant's biological clock must adjust rapidly to the environmental changes. But if the shift is too sudden, the plant will not be able to adapt in time. This can lead to thermal shock, causing damage to the plant or preventing it from growing properly. If it cannot adjust to these changes, the plant could die or fail to reproduce. Meanwhile, air pollution is also a major factor affecting plants. Polluted air not only harms human health, but also reduces the plant's ability to photosynthesize. When plants are exposed to pollutants like factory emissions or vehicle exhaust, their ability to absorb CO2 is reduced, affecting photosynthesis and depleting their energy. This not only stunts plant growth but also causes imbalances in their growth process. Another impact we cannot overlook is human destruction of the natural environment. When we excessively intervene in nature, such as through deforestation, land encroachment, or altering the structure of living environments, we disrupt the plant's natural processes. The loss of dense forests or green areas reduces biodiversity and negatively impacts the plant's biological clock. When plants can no longer grow in their natural environment, their biological clocks are affected and cannot function as effectively as before. So, what can we do to minimize these impacts on plants and help their biological clocks function properly? One simple but effective solution is to protect the environment and reduce light pollution, air pollution, and other harmful interventions. We can start by limiting the use of artificial light at night, or planting more trees to create natural habitats for plants. Additionally, protecting and restoring forests is an important measure to help plants maintain their biological clocks. Furthermore, changing our approach to farming and plant care is also vital. By applying sustainable farming practices, such as seasonal planting, proper plant care, and using plant varieties that can withstand climate change, we can help the plant's biological clock work more effectively. This not only enhances crop yields but also helps protect the environment and reduce reliance on chemicals. Finally, when you look at the plants around you, remember that each plant has its own story about how it adapts and thrives. And when we understand and protect the plant's biological clock, we not only protect nature but also contribute to building a sustainable future. Let these thoughts gently lull you to sleep, so that when you wake up, you'll realize that you don't just live in harmony with nature, but are a part of the great story of life. We have explored the impact of environmental factors on the plant's biological clock and the steps we can take to protect plants from these changes. Every environmental factor, whether it's light, temperature, or pollution, can profoundly affect plant development. But beyond the factors we can control, there's an even bigger issue affecting all living beings on Earth, including plants: climate change. Have you ever thought that changes in the plant biological clock could provide important solutions for the future? Understanding this will help us build a sustainable agricultural world where plants not only thrive but also contribute to protecting the environment and preserving natural resources. When you think of the plants in the garden or park near your home, you may only see them standing still, but in reality, they are constantly monitoring every small change in the world around them, and each plant has its own story of adaptation and survival. I hope that with these thoughts, you'll feel more at peace and relaxed, and as you drift off to sleep, you'll realize that you are part of a wonderful ecosystem where every living being, from plants to humans, plays an important role in maintaining life. Together, we have explored so much about the wondrous world of plants, from how they keep time to how environmental factors and climate change affect their biological clocks. Now, we will move to the conclusion of this story, where I want to reflect with you on the importance of protecting and maintaining the plant biological clock for the future. This is not only a lesson in science, but also a reminder of our responsibility towards nature. When you look around, you may see the trees standing tall, silently under the sunlight, sometimes stretching in the wind or gently swaying in the rain. They are not just natural beings, but perfect biological machines, always in sync with the cycle of time given by nature. And if we can understand and protect these rhythms, we will contribute to preserving not just a species of plant, but our entire planet. The plants around us have lived for millions of years, always knowing how to survive and thrive in an ever-changing natural environment. However, in today's context, when their habitats are severely devastated by human activity, our task has become more important than ever. The ability of a plant to flower, bear fruit, or shed leaves at the right time not only ensures its survival, but also affects the entire surrounding ecosystem. All other creatures, from animals to humans, depend on plants to sustain life. Therefore, protecting the plant biological clock is, in essence, protecting our own lives. To do this, we must first recognize the importance of plants and their role in life. Plants are not just a source of food, oxygen, and materials for us. They also play a crucial role in regulating the climate, protecting the environment, and maintaining biodiversity. When we protect plants, we are truly protecting ourselves, safeguarding the future of this planet. One of the most important things we can do is protect and restore forested areas and green spaces. Forests are not only the lungs of the earth, but also the habitats of millions of species of animals and plants, including trees. However, with the current deforestation, many trees no longer have the natural space and conditions they need to grow in sync with their biological clocks. Replanting forests, protecting natural forest areas, and maintaining ecosystems are direct ways to protect the plant biological clock. If we can help plants grow in their natural environments, they will function as the biological clocks they were meant to be. Additionally, creating green spaces in urban areas is also vital. The urban environment often lacks sufficient space for plants to thrive, but even in large cities, we can still create small green spaces, such as parks, tree gardens, or rooftop gardens. These areas not only help improve air quality, but also provide spaces where plants can grow, maintain their biological clocks, and create healthy living spaces for people. Minimizing light pollution is also an important factor in protecting the plant biological clock. In many urban areas, excessive artificial light at night can disrupt the photosynthesis process and natural plant growth. If we reduce the use of light at night or only use artificial light when necessary, we can help plants rest at night, just as they would in their natural environment. This not only helps plants grow stronger, but also protects biodiversity and the surrounding environment. To maintain the plant biological clock, we must also pay attention to proper plant care. Plants need sufficient light, water, and nutrients to grow healthily. However, more than that, understanding and respecting the plant's physiological cycle is very important. We need to learn how to care for plants according to the seasons, planting the right varieties suitable for the climate and living conditions of each area. Planting the right tree at the right time will help it grow in harmony with its natural rhythm and achieve the best results in flowering, fruiting, and reproduction. However, for these efforts to be effective, there needs to be a synergy between humans and nature. We, the inhabitants of this planet, need to change our mindset and actions to create a sustainable future for plants and for ourselves. We must understand that each tree, each plant species has an important role in the ecosystem, and protecting them means protecting our own lives. All of these efforts will not succeed unless we start with small actions. It is through small changes in how we treat plants that we can create a brighter future, whether it's planting trees, protecting forests, or simply changing our habits of using artificial light. All contribute to maintaining life for plants, the ecosystem, and our future. And when you drift off to sleep tonight, think about the plants you've seen in life, about the leaves swaying in the wind, and about each biological rhythm they live by. Feel that not only plants, but we, the humans living alongside them, also have a role in maintaining life on this planet. Thank you for joining me in exploring the stories of the natural world, and I hope these thoughts will help you feel more peaceful and lighter, so that when you wake up tomorrow morning, you will sense the strong connection between yourself and the world around you. You can close your eyes now and let these thoughts fade away like mist. If your mind still wants to wander, let it continue its journey to the next video, where we delve deeper into the mysteries of the soul. And if your body is tired, let this sound lull you to sleep. No need to try, just breathe. And remember, everything you're searching for is quietly resting inside yourself.